Good morning, everybody. I'm earlier than yesterday. We didn't get no storm yesterday. You guys heard it. I thought we were going to get a good thunderstorm. Nope. Nada. We're going to continue it with Leviticus, chapter 11 through 20. The next time will be only 7. That's okay. That could be like a short for like a Sunday if I choose to do that. I think they'll catch up to me about using the website. So I might have to change things eventually. So, well, the other one was copyrighted, but they never really contacted me. You know. I was brushing my hair this morning, getting my hair up, try to look decent after I, got up. I had a chunk of hair I pulled out of my head. Because I sleep on my left side. And it gets snarly, man. Knotted. Got, she barked a few times last night. First time my brother came in, right when she was about to calm down. The next time I got her to calm down. The time after that, I got her to calm down. Um, the last time he came in, I said, "Don't come in every single time she barks." Hey there, pirate. How are you? Welcome to my devotional. We're just going to sit back today and listen to the book of Leviticus. We started it yesterday, so if you want to catch up, you can later on watch yesterday's, or what I say, listen to yesterday's. Let's get started. Our Father in heaven, may your name be kept holy. May your kingdom come soon. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today the food we need, and forgive us our sins, as we have forgiven those who sin against us, and don't let us yield to temptations, but rescue us from the evil one. Thank you, Jehovah, for another beautiful day on your beautiful earth. And thank you for allowing us to wake up today. And thank you for what you did for us in the past, present, and what you will do for us in the future. And thank you for bringing Pirate Gaming to me. And I hope he or she stays and listens to your words. Please look after Tate, who has um, had a heart transplant when he was a little boy, and because of that, it's some kind of syndrome he contracted, and he has cancer. Please help him among Cindy Lee, Lisa, Shannon Doherty, King Charles, Princess Kate, Jen's friend Shannon, and Isabella Strahan. Sorry, Isabella Strahan. They all have cancer, different kinds, different stages. Please help them, give them mental and physical strength to beat their disease. And help Celine Dion with her stiff person syndrome, and give her a boost of energy for when she comes back to singing. I can't wait. Ah. And give her mental and physical strength to beat her disease. And help Jenny, Christina, Tiffany, and Robin with mental and physical needs and mental needs, medical needs, as well as Miss Dan and her daughters. Arnie, Vicky, and family, Carol and mom, please help them. In Jesus' name, amen. That's better. That's better. What we do today, Pirate Gaming, if you're still here, we just sit back and listen to the Bible being played for us. And it's already on the page. How cool. Leviticus chapter 11, yep. And it's going to play all the way to number 20.
Chapter 11. Then Jehovah said to Moses and Aaron, "Tell the Israelites, these are the living creatures of the earth that you may eat. Every animal that has a split hoof and a cleft in its hooves, and that chews the cud, may be eaten. But you must not eat these animals that chew the cud or have a split hoof: the camel, which chews the cud but does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. Also the rock badger, because it chews the cud but does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. Also the hare, because it chews the cud but does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. Also the pig, because it has a split hoof and a cleft in the hoof, but does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat any of their flesh or touch their dead body. They are unclean for you. This is what you may eat of everything in the waters. Anything in the waters that has fins and scales, whether in the seas or in the rivers, it you may eat. But anything in the seas and in the rivers that has no fins and scales, among all the swarming creatures and of every other living creature that is in the waters, it is a loathsome thing for you. Yes, they should be loathsome to you, and you must not eat any of their flesh, and you must loathe their carcasses. Everything in the waters that has no fins and scales is a loathsome thing to you. These are the flying creatures that you are to loathe. They should not be eaten, for they are loathsome. The eagle, the osprey, the black vulture, the red kite, and every kind of black kite, every kind of raven, the ostrich, the owl, the gull, every kind of falcon, the little owl, the cormorant, the long-eared owl, the swan, the pelican, the vulture, the stork, every kind of heron, the hoopoe, and the bat. Every winged swarming creature that goes on all fours is something loathsome to you. Of the winged swarming creatures that move on all fours, you may eat only those that have jointed legs above their feet for leaping on the ground. Of these you may eat various kinds of migratory locusts, other edible locusts, crickets, and grasshoppers. All other winged swarming creatures with 4 legs are something loathsome to you. By these you would make yourselves unclean. Everyone touching their dead bodies will be unclean until the evening. Anyone carrying any of their dead bodies should wash his garments. He will be unclean until the evening. Any animal that has a split hoof, but does not have a cleft, and does not chew its cud, is unclean to you. Everyone touching them will be unclean. Every living creature that walks on all fours, among the creatures that walk on all fours, is unclean to you. Everyone touching their dead bodies will be unclean until the evening. The one who carries their dead bodies should wash his garments, and he will be unclean until the evening. They are unclean to you. These are the swarming creatures of the earth that are unclean to you: the mole rat, the mouse, every kind of lizard, the gecko, the large lizard, the newt, the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These swarming creatures are unclean to you. Everyone touching their dead bodies will be unclean until the evening. Now anything they fall on when they die will be unclean, whether a wooden utensil, a garment, a skin, or a piece of sackcloth. Any utensil that is used should be immersed in water, and it will be unclean until the evening. Then it will be clean. If they fall into an earthenware vessel, you are to smash it, and anything that was in it will be unclean. Any kind of food that comes in contact with water from such a vessel will be unclean, and any drinkable liquid in such a vessel will be unclean. Anything their dead bodies fall on will be unclean. Whether oven or small stove, it should be broken into pieces. They are unclean, and they will remain unclean to you. Only a spring and a cistern for storing water will continue clean, but anyone touching their dead bodies will be unclean. If their dead bodies fall on a plant seed that is to be sown, it is clean. But if water is put on a seed, and part of their dead body falls on it, the seed is unclean to you. Now, if an animal that you use for food dies, whoever touches its dead body will be unclean until the evening. Whoever eats any of its dead body should wash his garments, and he will be unclean until the evening. Whoever carries off its dead body should wash his garments, and he will be unclean until the evening. Every swarming creature of the earth is something loathsome. It must not be eaten. You must not eat any creature that crawls on its belly, any creature that goes on all fours, or any of earth's swarming creatures with a great number of legs, for they are something loathsome. Do not make yourselves loathsome by means of any swarming creature, and do not defile yourselves and become unclean by them. For I am Jehovah your God, and you must sanctify yourselves and become holy, because I am holy. So you must not make yourselves unclean by any swarming creature that moves on the earth. For I am Jehovah, who is leading you up out of the land of Egypt to prove myself God to you. And you must be holy, because I am holy. This is the law about the animals, the flying creatures, every living creature that moves through the waters, and concerning every creature that swarms on the earth, in order to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean, and between the living creatures that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. Chapter 12. Jehovah went on to say to Moses, "Tell the Israelites, if a woman becomes pregnant and gives birth to a male, she will be unclean for 7 days, just as she is in the days of the impurity when she is menstruating. On the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin will be circumcised. She will continue cleansing herself from the blood for the next 33 days. She should not touch any holy thing, and she should not come into the holy place until she fulfills the days of her purification. If she should give birth to a female, she will then be unclean for 14 days, just as she would be during her menstruation. She will continue cleansing herself from the blood for the next 66 days. When the days of her purification for a son or a daughter are completed, she will bring a young ram in its first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering, to the entrance of the tent of meeting to the priest. He will present before Jehovah and make atonement for her, and she will be clean from her flow of blood. This is the law about the woman who gives birth to either a male or a female. But if she cannot afford a sheep, she must then take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one for a burnt offering and one for a sin offering. And the priest will make atonement for her, and she will be clean." Chapter 13. Jehovah continued to speak to Moses and Aaron, saying, "If a man develops on his skin a swelling, a scab, or a blotch, and it could become the disease of leprosy on his skin, he must then be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons the priests. The priest will examine the infection on his skin. When the hair in the infection has turned white, and the appearance of the infection is deeper than the skin, it is the disease of leprosy. The priest will examine it and declare him unclean. But if the blotch on his skin is white, and its appearance is not deeper than the skin, and the hair has not turned white, the priest will then quarantine the infected person for 7 days. The priest will then examine him on the 7th day, and if it appears that the infection has stopped and has not spread on the skin, the priest will quarantine him for another 7 days. The priest should examine him again on the 7th day, and if the infection has faded and has not spread in the skin, the priest will declare him clean. It was only a scab. The man will then wash his garments and be clean. But if the scab has definitely spread on the skin after he appears before the priest to establish his purification, he will then appear again before the priest. The priest will examine it, and if the scab has spread in the skin, the priest will then declare him unclean. It is leprosy. If the disease of leprosy develops in a man, he must then be brought to the priest, and the priest will examine him. If there is a white swelling on the skin, and it has turned the hair white, and there is an open sore in the swelling, it is chronic leprosy on his skin, and the priest will declare him unclean. He should not quarantine him, for he is unclean. Now, if the leprosy breaks out all over the skin, and the leprosy covers the person with the disease from head to foot, as far as the priest can see, and the priest has examined him, and sees that the leprosy has covered all his skin, he will then declare the infected person clean. All of it has turned white, and he is clean. But whenever an open sore appears in it, he will be unclean. When the priest sees the open sore, he will declare him unclean. The open sore is unclean. It is leprosy. But if the open sore again turns white, he will then come to the priest. The priest will examine him, and if the infection has turned white, the priest will then declare the infected person clean. He is clean. If a person develops a boil on his skin and it heals, but in the place of the boil, a white swelling or a reddish-white blotch has developed, he must then show himself to the priest. The priest will examine it, and if it appears to be deeper than the skin and his hair has turned white, the priest will then declare him unclean. It is the disease of leprosy that has broken out in the boil. But if the priest examines it and sees that there is no white hair in it, and it is not deeper than the skin and appears faded, the priest will then quarantine him for 7 days. And if it has clearly spread on the skin, the priest will then declare him unclean. It is a disease. But if the blotch stays in one place and has not spread, it is only the inflammation from the boil, and the priest will declare him clean. Or if someone has a scar from the fire, and the raw flesh of the scar becomes a reddish-white blotch or a white one, the priest will then examine it. If the hair in the blotch has turned white, and it appears to be deeper than the skin, it is leprosy that has broken out in the scar, and the priest will declare him unclean. It is the disease of leprosy. But if the priest examines it and sees that there is no white hair in the blotch, and it is not deeper than the skin, and it is faded, the priest will then quarantine him for 7 days. The priest will examine him on the 7th day, and if it has clearly spread on the skin, the priest will then declare him unclean. It is the disease of leprosy. But if the blotch stays in one place and has not spread over the skin, and it is faded, it is only a swelling of the scar, and the priest will declare him clean, because it is an inflammation of the scar. When a man or a woman develops an infection on the head or on the chin, the priest will then examine the infection. If it appears to be deeper than the skin, and the hair is yellow and thin, the priest will then declare such one unclean. It is an infection of the scalp or the beard. It is leprosy of the head or of the chin. But if the priest sees that the infection does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, the priest should quarantine the infected person for 7 days. The priest will examine the infection on the 7th day, and if the infected area has not spread, and no yellow hair has developed in it, and the appearance of the infected area is not deeper than the skin, the person should have himself shaved, but he will not have the infected area shaved. Then the priest will quarantine the infected person for 7 days. The priest will again examine the infected area on the 7th day, and if the infection of the scalp and beard has not spread on the skin, and it does not appear deeper than the skin, the priest must then declare him clean, and he should wash his garments and be clean. But if the infection clearly spreads on the skin after his purification, the priest will examine him, and if the infection has spread on the skin, the priest does not need to look for yellow hair. That person is unclean. But if the examination shows that the infection has not spread and black hair has grown on it, the infection has been healed. He is clean, and the priest will declare him clean. If a man or a woman develops blotches on the skin, and the blotches are white, the priest will examine them. If the skin blotches are faded white, it is a harmless rash that has broken out on the skin. That person is clean. If a man loses the hair of his head and becomes bald, he is clean. If he loses the hair on the front of his head and becomes bald there, he is clean. But if a reddish-white sore develops on the bald part of his scalp or on his forehead, it is leprosy breaking out on his scalp or on his forehead. The priest will examine him, and if the swelling from the infection is reddish-white on the bald spot on top of his head or on his forehead, and it looks like leprosy on his skin, he is a leper. He is unclean, and the priest should declare him unclean because of the disease on his head. As for the leper who has the disease, his garments should be torn, and his head should be left ungroomed, and he should cover over his moustache and call out, "Unclean, unclean." He will be unclean the whole time that he has the disease. Since he is unclean, he should live in isolation. His dwelling place will be outside the camp. If the disease of leprosy contaminates a garment, whether a woolen or a linen garment, either in the warp or in the woof of the linen or of the wool, or in a skin, or in anything made of skin, and a yellowish green or reddish stain from the disease contaminates the garment, a skin, the warp, the woof, or any article of skin, it is a contamination from leprosy, and it should be shown to the priest. The priest will examine the disease, and he must quarantine the disease for 7 days. When he examines the disease on the 7th day and sees that it has spread in the garment, in the warp, in the woof, or in the skin, regardless of what the skin is used for, the disease is malignant leprosy, and it is unclean. He should burn the garment, or the warp, or the woof in the wool, or in the linen, or any article of skin in which the disease has developed, for it is malignant leprosy. It should be burned in the fire. But if the priest examines it, and the disease has not spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in any article of skin, the priest will then command that they should wash the contaminated item, and he will quarantine it for another 7 days. The priest will then examine the contaminated item after it has been thoroughly washed. If the appearance of the contamination has not changed, even if the disease has not spread, it is unclean. You should burn it in the fire because it has been eaten away, either from its underside or from its outside. But if the priest has examined it, and the contaminated part is faded after it has been thoroughly washed, he will then tear it out of the garment, or the skin, or the warp, or the woof. However, if it still appears in another part of the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in any article of skin, it is spreading, and you should burn any contaminated item in the fire. But when the contamination disappears from the garment, or the warp, or the woof, or any article of skin that you wash, it should then be washed a second time, and it will be clean. This is the law of the disease of leprosy in a garment, of wool or of linen, or in the warp or in the woof, or in any article of skin, for declaring it clean or unclean. Chapter 14.
Oh,
Jehovah continued to speak to Moses.
I'm sorry, it
saying,
wasn't scrolling for
"This
some
is to
reason.
be the law of the leper on the day his purification is established, when he is to be brought to the priest. The priest will go outside the camp and examine him.
You know, it highlights where it's reading. It wasn't doing that, and I wonder why. Maybe I double clicked again like yesterday.
The leper has been cured of the leprosy. The priest will command him to bring 2 live clean birds, cedar wood, scarlet material, and hyssop for his cleansing. The priest will command that the one bird be killed in an earthenware vessel over running water. But he should take the living bird, along with the cedar wood, the scarlet material, and the hyssop, and dip them together in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. Then he will spatter it 7 times on the one cleansing himself from the leprosy, and declare him clean, and he will set the living bird free in the open field. The one cleansing himself must wash his garments and shave off all his hair and bathe in water, and he will be clean. Afterward, he may come into the camp, but he will dwell outside his tent for 7 days. On the 7th day, he should shave off all the hair on his head and his chin and his eyebrows. After he shaves off all his hair, he will wash his garments and bathe himself in water, and he will be clean. On the 8th day, he will take 2 sound young rams, 1 sound female lamb in its first year, 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and 1 log measure of oil. And the priest who declares him clean will present the man who is cleansing himself, along with the offerings, before Jehovah, at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The priest will take the 1 young ram and offer it as a guilt offering, together with the log measure of oil, and he will wave them back and forth as a wave offering before Jehovah. Then he will slaughter the young ram in the place where the sin offering and the burnt offering are usually slaughtered, in a holy place, because, like the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is something most holy. Then the priest will take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and the priest will put it on the right earlobe of the one cleansing himself, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the priest will take some of the log measure of oil and pour it into his own left palm. The priest will then dip his right finger into the oil that is in his left palm, and spatter some of the oil with his finger 7 times before Jehovah. Then the priest will put some of the remaining oil in his palm on the right earlobe of the one cleansing himself, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, over the blood of the guilt offering. The priest will put what is left over of the oil in his palm on the head of the one cleansing himself, and the priest will make atonement for him before Jehovah. The priest will sacrifice the sin offering and make atonement for the one cleansing himself from his impurity, and afterward he will slaughter the burnt offering. And the priest will offer up the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar, and the priest will make atonement for him, and he will be clean. However, if he is poor and does not have enough means, he will then take 1 young ram as a guilt offering for a wave offering in order to make atonement for himself, along with 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, a log measure of oil, and 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, according to his means. The one will serve as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering.
You stop.
On the 8th day, he will bring them for establishing his purification to the priest, at the entrance of the tent of meeting before Jehovah. The priest will take the young ram of the guilt offering and the log measure of oil, and the priest will wave them back and forth as a wave offering before Jehovah. He will then slaughter the young ram of the guilt offering, and the priest will take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the right earlobe of the one cleansing himself, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest will pour some of the oil into his own left palm, and he will then spatter with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left palm 7 times before Jehovah. And the priest will put some of the oil that is in his palm on the right earlobe of the one cleansing himself, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the same places that he put the blood of the guilt offering. The priest will then put what is left over of the oil in his palm on the head of the one cleansing himself, in order to make atonement for him before Jehovah. He will offer up 1 of the turtle doves, or 1 of the young pigeons, according to his means, the one he can afford, as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering along with the grain offering, and the priest will make atonement for the one cleansing himself before Jehovah. This is the law for the one in whom the disease of leprosy was, but who does not have the means when establishing his purification. Then Jehovah said to Moses and Aaron, "When you come into the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as a possession, and I contaminate a house in your land with the disease of leprosy, the one to whom the house belongs should then come and tell the priest, 'Some kind of contamination has appeared in my house.' The priest will give orders to clear out the house before he comes to examine the contamination, in order that he may not declare everything that is in the house unclean, and after that the priest will come in to inspect the house. He will examine the affected area, and if the walls of the house are contaminated with yellowish green or reddish depressions, and they appear to be deeper than the wall surface, the priest will then go out of the house to the entryway of the house, and quarantine the house for 7 days. Then the priest will return on the seventh day and make an inspection. If the contamination has spread in the walls of the house, the priest will then give orders, and the contaminated stones must be torn out and thrown outside the city into an unclean place. Then he is to have the inside of the house thoroughly scraped, and the plaster and mortar that is removed should be discarded outside the city in an unclean place. They will then insert other stones in the place of the stones they removed, and he should use different mortar and have the house plastered. If, though, the contamination returns and breaks out in the house after the stones were torn out and the house was scraped and replastered, the priest will then go in and inspect it. If the contamination has spread in the house, it is malignant leprosy in the house. The house is unclean. He will then have the house pulled down, its stones, its timbers, and all the plaster and mortar of the house, and carried outside the city to an unclean place. But whoever enters the house any of the days it is quarantined will be unclean until the evening. And whoever lies down in the house should wash his garments, and whoever eats in the house should wash his garments. However, if the priest comes and sees that the contamination has not spread in the house after the house was replastered, the priest will then declare the house clean, because the contamination has been healed. In order to purify the house from uncleanness, he will take 2 birds, cedar wood, scarlet material, and hyssop. He is to kill the one bird in an earthenware vessel over running water. Then he will take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet material, and the live bird, and dip them in the blood of the bird that was killed, and in the running water. And he must spatter it toward the house 7 times. And he will purify the house from uncleanness with the blood of the bird, the running water, the live bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet material. He will then set the live bird free outside the city in the open field, and make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. This is the law respecting any case of leprosy, infection of the scalp or the beard, leprosy of the garment or the house, and respecting swellings, scabs, and blotches, in order to determine when something is unclean and when something is clean. This is the law about leprosy. Chapter 15. Jehovah continued to speak to Moses and Aaron, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, if a man has a discharge from his genital organ, this discharge makes him unclean. He is unclean from the discharge, whether the discharge continues to flow from his genitals or is obstructed. He is still unclean. Any bed that the one with the discharge lies on will be unclean, and anything he sits on will be unclean. A man who touches his bed must wash his garments, and he should bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. Anyone who sits on an article that the one having a discharge sat on should wash his garments, bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. Whoever touches the flesh of the one having a discharge should wash his garments, bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. If the one who has a discharge spits on someone clean, that person must wash his garments, bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. Any saddle that the one with the discharge rides on will be unclean. Anyone touching anything that was under him will be unclean until the evening, and anyone who carries those items will wash his garments, bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. If the one with the discharge has not washed his hands in water, and he touches someone, that person must then wash his garments, bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. An earthenware vessel that the one having a discharge touches should be smashed, and any wooden vessel should be washed with water. When the discharge stops and the person becomes clean from it, he will then count 7 days for his purification, and he must wash his garments, bathe himself in running water, and he will be clean. On the 8th day, he should take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons and come before Jehovah at the entrance of the tent of meeting and give them to the priest. And the priest will offer them, the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. And the priest will make atonement for him before Jehovah concerning his discharge. Now, if a man has an emission of semen, he should bathe his whole body in water and be unclean until the evening. He must wash with water any garment and any skin with semen on it, and it will be unclean until the evening. When a man lies with a woman and has an emission of semen, they should bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. If a woman has a discharge of blood from her body, she will continue in her menstrual impurity for 7 days. Anyone touching her will be unclean until the evening. Anything she lies down on in her menstrual impurity will be unclean, and everything she sits on will be unclean. Anyone touching her bed should wash his garments, bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. Anyone touching any article she sat on should wash his garments, bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. If she sat on the bed or on another article, his touching it will make him unclean until the evening. And if a man lies down with her, and her menstrual impurity comes on him, he will then be unclean for 7 days, and any bed on which he lies down will be unclean. When a woman's discharge of blood flows for many days, when it is not the regular time of her menstruation, or if she should have a flow longer than her usual menstruation, she will be unclean during all the days of her discharge, as in the days of her menstrual impurity. Any bed she lies on during the days of her discharge will become like the bed of her menstrual impurity, and any article she sits on will become unclean, like the uncleanness of her menstrual impurity. Anyone touching them will be unclean, and he must wash his garments, bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. However, when she is clean from her discharge, she will count for herself 7 days, and afterwards she will be clean. On the 8th day, she should take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and she will bring them to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The priest will make the one a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering, and the priest will make atonement for her before Jehovah concerning her unclean discharge. Thus you must keep the Israelites separate from their uncleanness, so that they do not die in their uncleanness by defiling my tabernacle, which is in their midst. This is the law about the man having a discharge, the man who is unclean because of an emission of semen, the woman during her menstrual impurity, any male or female who has a discharge flowing from the body, and a man who lies down with an unclean woman. Chapter 16. Jehovah spoke to Moses after the death of Aaron's 2 sons who died for approaching Jehovah. Jehovah said to Moses, "Tell Aaron your brother that he may not come at just any time into the holy place inside the curtain, in front of the cover on the ark, so that he may not die, for I will appear over the cover in a cloud." This is what Aaron should bring when he comes into the holy place: a young bull for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering. He should put on the holy linen robe, and the linen shorts should cover his body, and he should wrap himself with the linen sash, and his head with the linen turban. A holy garment.
Sorry about that.
He will bathe himself in water and put them on. He should take from the assembly of the Israelites 2 young male goats for a sin offering, and 1 ram for a burnt offering. Aaron must then present the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and he will make atonement in behalf of himself and his house. He will then take the 2 goats and make them stand before Jehovah at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Aaron will draw lots over the 2 goats, the one lot for Jehovah, and the other lot for Azazel. Aaron will present the goat that was designated by lot for Jehovah and make it a sin offering. But the goat designated by lot for Azazel should be brought alive to stand before Jehovah in order to perform the atonement upon it, so that it may be sent away for Azazel into the wilderness. Aaron will present the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement in behalf of himself and his house. Afterward he will slaughter the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself. He will then take the fire holder full of burning coals from the altar before Jehovah, and 2 handfuls of fine perfumed incense, and he will bring them inside the curtain. He will also put the incense on the fire before Jehovah, and the cloud of the incense will envelop the ark cover, which is on the testimony, so that he may not die. He will take some of the bull's blood and spatter it with his finger in front of the cover on the east side, and he will spatter some of the blood with his finger 7 times before the cover. He will then slaughter the goat of the sin offering, which is for the people, and bring its blood inside the curtain, and do with its blood the same as he did with the bull's blood. He is to spatter it toward the cover and before the cover. He must make atonement for the holy place concerning the acts of uncleanness of the Israelites, and concerning their transgressions and their sins, and that is what he should do for the tent of meeting, which is located among them in the midst of their acts of uncleanness. No other man should be in the tent of meeting from the time he goes in to make atonement in the holy place until he comes out. He will make atonement in behalf of himself and his house, and in behalf of the entire congregation of Israel. He will then come out to the altar, which is before Jehovah, and make atonement for it. And he will take some of the bull's blood and some of the goat's blood, and put it on the horns of the altar on all sides. He will also spatter some of the blood on it with his finger 7 times, and cleanse it, and sanctify it from the acts of uncleanness of the Israelites. When he has finished making atonement for the holy place, and the tent of meeting, and the altar, he will also present the live goat. Aaron will lay both his hands on the head of the live goat, and confess over it all the errors of the Israelites, and all their transgressions, and all their sins, and he will put them on the head of the goat, and send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a man designated to do this. The goat will carry upon itself all their errors into a desert land, and he will send the goat away into the wilderness. Aaron will then enter into the tent of meeting, and take off the linen garments that he put on when he went into the holy place, and he will lay them down there. He must bathe himself in water in a holy place, and put on his garments. Then he will come out and offer up his burnt offering and the people's burnt offering, and make atonement in his own behalf, and in behalf of the people. He will make the fat of the sin offering smoke on the altar. The man who sent away the goat for Azazel should wash his garments, and bathe himself in water, and after that he may come into the camp. And the bull of the sin offering, and the goat of the sin offering, whose blood was brought into the holy place to make atonement, will be taken outside the camp, and their skins and their flesh and their dung will be burned in the fire. The one who burns them should wash his garments, and bathe himself in water, and after that he may come into the camp. It will serve as a lasting statute for you. In the 7th month, on the 10th of the month, you should afflict yourselves, and you must not do any work, whether a native or a foreigner who is residing among you. On this day atonement will be made for you, to declare you clean. You will be clean from all your sins before Jehovah. It is a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you should afflict yourselves. It is a lasting statute. The priest who is anointed and installed to serve as priest in place of his father will make atonement, and put on the linen garments, the holy garments. He will make atonement for the holy sanctuary, the tent of meeting, and the altar. And he will make atonement for the priests and for all the people of the congregation. This will serve as a lasting statute for you, to make atonement for the Israelites concerning all their sins, once each year. So he did just as Jehovah had commanded Moses.
Jeez, is that necessary?
Chapter 17. Jehovah went on to say to Moses, "Speak to Aaron and his sons and all the Israelites, and say to them, this is what Jehovah has commanded. If any man of the house of Israel slaughters a bull or a young ram or a goat in the camp, or if he slaughters it outside the camp, instead of bringing it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to present it as an offering to Jehovah before the tabernacle of Jehovah, blood guilt will be counted to that man. He has shed blood, and that man must be cut off from among his people. This is so that the Israelites will bring the sacrifices, which they now sacrifice in the open field, to Jehovah, to the entrance of the tent of meeting, to the priest. They are to sacrifice these as communion sacrifices to Jehovah. And the priest will sprinkle the blood on Jehovah's altar at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and make the fat smoke as a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. So they should no longer offer sacrifices to the goat-like demons with which they are prostituting themselves. This will serve as a lasting statute for you throughout your generations. You should say to them, any man of the house of Israel, or any foreigner who is residing in your midst, who offers up a burnt offering or a sacrifice, and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to offer it to Jehovah, must be cut off from his people. If any man of the house of Israel, or any foreigner who is residing in your midst, eats any sort of blood, I will certainly set my face against the one who is eating the blood, and I will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I myself have given it on the altar for you, to make atonement for yourselves, because it is the blood that makes atonement by means of the life in it. That is why I have said to the Israelites, none of you should eat blood, and no foreigner who is residing in your midst should eat blood. If one of the Israelites or some foreigner who is residing in your midst is hunting, and catches a wild animal or a bird that may be eaten, he must pour its blood out and cover it with dust. For the life of every sort of flesh is its blood, because the life is in it. Consequently, I said to the Israelites, you must not eat the blood of any sort of flesh, because the life of every sort of flesh is its blood. Anyone eating it will be cut off. If anyone, whether a native or a foreigner, eats an animal found dead, or...
I thought he was saying soda. S-O-D-A. Soda. Soda flesh. I mean, what's soda flesh? Then look on sorta. Oh, sorta. Sorry.
one torn by a wild animal. He must then wash his garments and bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. Then he will be clean. But if he does not wash them and does not bathe himself, he will answer for his error. Chapter 18. Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, speak to the Israelites and say to them, I am Jehovah your God. You must not behave as they do in the land of Egypt, where you were dwelling, and you must not do what they do in the land of Canaan, where I am bringing you. And you must not walk in their statutes. You should carry out my judicial decisions, and you should keep my statutes and walk in them. I am Jehovah your God. You must keep my statutes and my judicial decisions. Anyone who does so will live by means of them. I am Jehovah. No man among you should approach any of his close relatives to have sexual relations. I am Jehovah. You must not have sexual relations with your father, and you must not have sexual relations with your mother. She is your mother, and you must not have sexual relations with her. You must not have sexual relations with your father's wife. It is exposing your father to shame. You must not have sexual relations with your sister. either the daughter of your father or the daughter of your mother, whether she is born in the same household or born outside of it. You must not have sexual relations with the daughter of your son or the daughter of your daughter, because they are your own nakedness. You must not have sexual relations with the daughter of your father's wife, the offspring of your father, because she is your sister. You must not have sexual relations with your father's sister. She is your father's blood relative. You must not have sexual relations with your mother's sister, because she is your mother's blood relative. You must not expose your father's brother to shame by having sexual relations with his wife. She is your aunt. You must not have sexual relations with your daughter-in-law. She is your son's wife, and you must not have relations with her. You must not have sexual relations with your brother's wife, because it is exposing your brother to shame. You must not have sexual relations with a woman and her daughter. You must not take the daughter of her son and the daughter of her daughter in order to have relations. They are her close relatives. It is an obscene act. You must not take a woman in addition to her sister as a rival wife and have sexual relations with her while her sister is alive. You must not approach a woman during her menstrual impurity to have sexual relations with her. You must not have sexual intercourse with the wife of your fellow man, making yourself unclean. You must not allow any of your offspring to be offered to Molech. You must not profane the name of your God in that way. I am Jehovah. You must not lie down with a male in the same way that you lie down with a woman. It is a detestable act. A man must not have sexual intercourse with an animal to become unclean by it, nor should a woman offer herself to an animal to have intercourse with it. It is a violation of what is natural. Do not make yourselves unclean by any of these things, for it is by all these things that the nations that I am driving out from before you have made themselves unclean. Therefore the land is unclean, and I will bring punishment on it for its error, and the land will vomit its inhabitants out. But you yourselves must keep my statutes and my judicial decisions, and you must not do any of these detestable things, whether a native or a foreigner who is residing among you. For all these detestable things were done by the men who lived in the land before you, and now the land is unclean. Then the land will not have to vomit you out for defiling it, in the same way that it will vomit out the nations that were before you. If anyone does any of these detestable things, all those doing them must be cut off from among their people. You must keep your obligation to me by not practicing any of the detestable customs that were carried on before you, so that you do not make yourselves unclean by them. I am Jehovah your God. Chapter 19. Jehovah spoke further to Moses, saying, Speak to the entire assembly of the Israelites, and tell them, You should be holy, because I, Jehovah your God, am holy. Each of you should respect his mother and his father, and you should keep my Sabbaths. I am Jehovah your God. Do not turn to worthless gods, or make for yourselves gods of cast metal. I am Jehovah your God. Now, if you offer a communion sacrifice to Jehovah, you should sacrifice it in such a way that you gain approval for yourselves. It should be eaten on the day of your sacrifice and on the next day. But what is left over until the third day should be burned in the fire. If, though, any of it is eaten on the third day, it is an offensive thing that will not be accepted with approval. The one eating it will answer for his error, because he has profaned a holy thing of Jehovah, and that person must be cut off from his people. When you reap the harvest of your land, you must not reap the edge of your field completely, and you must not pick up the gleaning of your harvest. Also, you must not gather the leftovers of your vineyard, or pick up the scattered grapes of your vineyard. You should leave them for the poor and the foreign resident. I am Jehovah your God. You must not steal, you must not deceive, and you must not deal falsely with one another. You must not swear to a lie in my name, and thus profane the name of your God. I am Jehovah. You must not defraud your fellow man, and you must not rob. You should not withhold the wages of a hired worker all night until morning. You must not curse a deaf man, or put an obstacle before a blind man, and you must be in fear of your God. I am Jehovah. You must not be unjust in your judgment. You must not show partiality to the poor, or show preference to the rich. With justice you should judge your fellow man. You must not go around spreading slander among your people. You must not stand up against the life of your fellow man. I am Jehovah. You must not hate your brother in your heart. You should by all means reprove your fellow man, so that you will not bear sin along with him. You must not take vengeance, nor hold a grudge against the sons of your people, and you must love your fellow man as yourself. I am Jehovah. You should keep my statutes. You must not interbreed two sorts of your domestic animals. You must not sow your field with two sorts of seed, and you must not wear a garment made with two sorts of thread mixed together. Now, if a man lies down with a woman and has intercourse with her, and she is a servant who is designated for another man, but she has not been redeemed or given her freedom, there should be a punishment. However, they should not be put to death, for she was not yet set free. He should bring his guilt offering to Jehovah to the entrance of the tent of meeting, a ram of guilt offering. The priest will make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering before Jehovah for the sin that he committed, and he will be forgiven for the sin that he committed. When you come into the land and you plant any tree for food, you must consider its fruitage impure and forbidden. For 3 years it will be forbidden to you. It must not be eaten. But in the 4th year, all its fruit will be holy for rejoicing before Jehovah. Then in the 5th year, you may eat its fruit in order to add its produce to your harvest. I am Jehovah your God. You must eat nothing containing blood. You must not look for omens or practice magic. You must not shave the hair on the side of your head or disfigure the edges of your beard. You must not make cuts in your flesh for a dead person, and you must not make tattoo markings on yourselves. I am Jehovah. Do not dishonor your daughter by making her a prostitute, so that the land may not commit prostitution and be filled with loose morals. You must keep my Sabbaths, and you must show reverence for my sanctuary. I am Jehovah. Do not turn to the spirit mediums, and do not consult fortune tellers, so as to become unclean by them. I am Jehovah your God. Before gray hair you should rise up, and you must show honor to an older man, and you must be in fear of your God. I am Jehovah. If a foreigner resides with you in your land, you must not mistreat him. The foreigner who resides with you should become to you like a native among you, and you must love him as yourself, for you were foreign residents in the land of Egypt. I am Jehovah your God. You must not use dishonest standards in measuring length, weight, or volume. You should use accurate scales, accurate weights, an accurate dry measure, and an accurate liquid measure. I am Jehovah your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. So you must keep all my statutes and all my judicial decisions, and you must follow them. I am Jehovah. Chapter 20.
That's
Jehovah
all,
went on
guys.
speaking to Moses, saying, You are to say to the Israelites, any man of Israel and any foreigner who resides in Israel, who gives any of his offspring to Molech, should be put to death without fail. The people of the land should stone him to death. I myself will set my face against that man, and I will cut him off from among his people, because he has given some of his offspring to Molech, and has defiled my holy place, and has profaned my holy name. If the people of the land should deliberately close their eyes to what that man does when he gives his offspring to Molech, and they do not put him to death, then I myself will certainly set my face against that man and his
Hi, Carol. So sorry I did not see you. Thank you.
family. I will cut off that man from his people, along with all who join him in prostituting themselves to Molech. As for the person who turns to the spirit mediums and the fortune tellers so as to commit spiritual prostitution with them, I will certainly turn against that person and cut him off from his people. You must sanctify yourselves and become holy, because I am Jehovah your God. And you must keep my statutes and carry them out. I am Jehovah who is sanctifying you. If there is any man who curses his father or his mother, he should be put to death without fail. Since he has cursed his father or his mother, his own blood is upon him. Now regarding a man who commits adultery with another man's wife, the one who commits adultery with the wife of his fellow man should be put to death without fail.
Sorry, I have to pause this. The puppy does need to go out to go potty. No, baby. Here we go. Sorry.
Adulterer and the adulteress.
Thank you.
A man who lies down with his father's wife has exposed his father to shame. Both of them should be put to death without fail. Their own blood is upon them. If a man lies down with his daughter-in-law, both of them should be put to death without fail.
Thank you,
They have
Carol.
violated what is natural. Their own blood is upon them. If a man lies down with a male, the same as one lies down with a woman, both of them have done a detestable thing. They should be put to death without fail. Their own blood is upon them. If a man takes a woman and her mother, it is an obscene act. They should burn him and them in the fire, so that obscene conduct may not continue among you. If a man has intercourse with a beast, he should be put to death without fail, and you should kill the beast. If a woman approaches any beast to have intercourse with it, you must kill the woman and the beast. They should be put to death without fail. Their own blood is upon them. If a man has sexual relations with his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother, and he sees her nakedness, and she sees his nakedness, it is a disgrace. They must be cut off before the eyes of the sons of their people. He has exposed his sister to shame. He should answer for his error. If a man lies down with a menstruating woman and has sexual relations with her, both he and she have exposed their flow of blood. Both of them must be cut off from among their people. You must not have sexual relations with your mother's sister or your father's sister, because that would be exposing a blood relative to shame. They should answer for their error. A man who lies down with his uncle's wife has exposed his uncle to shame. They should answer for their sin. They should die childless. If a man takes his brother's wife, it is something abhorrent. He has exposed his brother to shame. They should become childless. You must keep all my statutes and all my judicial decisions and carry them out, so that the land where I am bringing you to dwell will not vomit you out. You must not walk in the statutes of the nations that I am driving out from before you, for they have done all these things, and I abhor them. That is why I said to you, you will take possession of their land, and I will give it to you as your possession, a land flowing with milk and honey. Jehovah your God I am, who has set you apart from the peoples. You must make a distinction between the clean animal and the unclean, and between the unclean bird and the clean. You must not make yourselves loathsome by means of an animal or a bird or anything that creeps on the ground that I set apart for you to regard as unclean. You must be holy to me, because I, Jehovah, am holy, and I am setting you apart from the peoples to become mine. Any man or woman who acts as a spirit medium or as a fortune teller should be put to death without fail. The people should stone them to death. Their own blood is upon them. Chapter 21.
Nope, no, that's it. No.
Jehovah went on to say to Moses.
Nope, we're done reading. So, what we're gonna do... Okie dokie, Carol. We're gonna read Carol's verse request. I decided just to leave it at a one verse for a while. Oh yeah, Matthew's down here. Oh, Matthew, chapter 14. But at once Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." Don't be afraid of Jesus. No, don't be afraid of Jesus. Will be leaving here to go get a guru. So what I think I'll do is give her a good brushing before she goes. Yeah. So I love you guys. Let me go do that, and I'll see you later on. Love, don't judge. Peace out.